I found my son's baseball glove at the bottom of the last box, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The leather was cracked and faded, the laces loose from years of use. Marcus had carried this glove everywhere when he was 8 years old. To school, to church, even to bed some nights. I pressed it against my chest and felt the weight of 3 months collapse on top of me all at once. 3 months since the funeral. 3 months since I buried my only child. The room they gave me was small. A corner bedroom on the second floor with one window that looked out at the neighbor's fence. The walls were beige and bare. There was a twin bed, a dresser with a broken handle, and a lamp that flickered when you turned it on. I'd brought 4 boxes with me when I moved in. Clothes, a few books, some photos, and this glove. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it. My hands were shaking. I told myself this would work. That moving in with Lauren, my daughter-in-law, would be good for both of us. We could grieve together. I could help her with the bills, be there for my grandson Elijah. We could hold each other up. That's what family does, right? But from the moment I walked through her door, I knew something was wrong. At the funeral, Lauren hadn't cried. Not once. She stood beside the casket in a black dress with her arms crossed, staring at nothing. When people hugged her, she went stiff. When I reached for her hand, she pulled away. I told myself it was shock. People grieve differently. Maybe she just needed time. But 3 months later, time hadn't softened her. It had turned her cold. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door and quickly wiped my eyes. The glove went back in the box. I stood up and straightened my shirt just as Lauren appeared in the doorway. She didn't knock. "Dinner's at 6, she said flatly. "Don't be late." "I won't," I said. "Thank you." She turned to leave, then paused. Her eyes flicked to the open box on the floor, then back to me. Her jaw tightened. "You need to throw that stuff out," she said. "It's just taking up space." I looked at the box, at the glove. "It's all I have left of him," I said quietly. She exhaled through her nose, sharp and impatient. "He's gone," she said. "Keeping his old junk isn't going to bring him back." Then she walked away. I stood there, staring at the empty doorway, feeling like someone had just shoved me underwater. My chest burned. My throat tightened. But I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I just listened to her footsteps fade down the hall. That night, dinner was silent. Lauren sat at the head of the table, scrolling through her phone. Elijah, my 10-year-old grandson, sat across from me, eating fast, eyes down. I tried to smile at him, but he wouldn't look at me. "How was school today, Elijah?" I asked. He glanced at his mother. She didn't look up. "Fine," he mumbled. "Did you finish that project you were working on? The one about the solar system?" "Yeah." "Can I see it?" Lauren's fork scraped against her plate. Loud. Deliberate. "He's tired," she said, still looking at her phone. "Let him eat." I nodded. "Of course." Elijah finished his food in 3 more bites, stood up, and left the table without a word. I heard his footsteps pound up the stairs. His bedroom door closed. Then music started playing, loud enough that I knew he didn't want to hear us. Lauren and I sat alone. I tried to find something to say. Something that wouldn't make her angry. Something that might bring us closer. "I know this is hard." I started, "for both of us. But I'm here, Lauren, if you need anything." "I don't," she said, cutting me off. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were flat. "Empty. I don't need anything from you," she said. "I'm handling it." I swallowed hard. "I just thought—" "You thought wrong." She stood up, grabbed her plate, and walked to the sink. I sat there, staring at my cold food, feeling like a stranger in my own son's house. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs. The creak of the floorboards settling. The distant sound of a car passing on the street. And then I heard her voice. Lauren was on the phone, in the hallway, right outside my door. Her voice was low, but in the silence, I could hear every word. "I don't know how long I can do this," she said. "He's always here, always watching me." There was a pause. "No, I know. I said he could stay. But it's different now. Every time I look at him, I just..." Another pause. "I can't breathe in my own house. He's suffocating me." I closed my eyes and felt something crack open inside my chest. I wasn't wanted here. I wasn't family. I was a reminder, a burden, a ghost she couldn't bury. I lay there in the dark, listening to her footsteps fade away, and for the first time since Marcus died, I wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake. The baseball glove sat on the dresser across from me, barely visible in the moonlight. I stared at it until my vision blurred. And then I heard her voice again, faint, muffled, from her bedroom down the hall. "I'll figure it out," she said. "I just need him gone." I started waking up at 5:30 every morning to make breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, bacon, simple things. The kind of meal Marcus used to love when he was a kid. I thought maybe if I made myself useful, if I contributed, Lauren would see that I wasn't trying to get in her way, that I was trying to help. The first morning, I set the table for 3. I poured orange juice into glasses and waited. Lauren came downstairs at 6:45, already dressed for work. She stopped when she saw the food. "What's this?" she asked. "Breakfast," I said, trying to smile. "I thought we could eat together before." "I don't eat breakfast." She grabbed her keys from the counter and headed for the door. "What about Elijah?" I asked. She paused, hand on the doorknob. "He'll eat cereal when he gets up," she said. "You don't have to do this." Then she left. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the 3 plates of food getting cold. The eggs looked rubbery now. The bacon had lost its crispness. I heard Elijah's alarm go off upstairs, then his footsteps shuffling across the floor. He came down 10 minutes later, backpack already on. "Morning, Elijah," I said. "I made breakfast." He looked at the table, then at me. "Mom said I should just grab something quick," he mumbled. He pulled a granola bar from the cabinet, stuffed it in his pocket, and headed for the door. "Wait," I said. "Do you need a ride to school?" "I can..." "Bus is coming," he said, not looking back. The door closed behind him. I sat down at the table alone and ate cold eggs in silence. That became my routine. Every morning, I'd make breakfast. Every morning, it would go uneaten. I'd clean up the dishes, wipe down the counters, and wonder what I was doing wrong. I tried other things, too. The kitchen faucet had been dripping for weeks. I heard it every night, a steady, maddening drip that echoed through the house. So one afternoon, I went to a hardware store, bought a washer, and fixed it. When Lauren came home, I mentioned it. "The faucet's not dripping anymore," I said. "I replaced the washer." She set her purse down and opened the refrigerator without looking at me. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I was going to call someone." "I know. I just thought I could save you the money." She pulled out a bottle of wine and poured herself a glass. "I can handle it," she said. That was her favorite phrase. I can handle it. It didn't matter what I offered to do. Mow the lawn, fix the broken porch step, help Elijah with his homework. Every time, the answer was the same. I can handle it. You don't have to do that. I've got it. It was like she was trying to erase me, to make me so small and unnecessary that I'd just disappear on my own. One evening, I tried to sit with Elijah while he did his math homework at the dining room table. He was struggling with fractions, and I could see the frustration building in his face. "Need some help?" I asked, pulling out the chair beside him. He glanced toward the living room, where Lauren was watching TV. "I'm okay," he said quietly. "It's no trouble. I used to help your dad with this same stuff when he was your age." His pencil stopped moving. For a second, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or sadness. But then Lauren's voice cut through the room. "Elijah, come in here." He stood up immediately, gathered his books, and left without another word. I sat there alone at the dining room table, staring at the empty chair. That's when I realized it wasn't just Lauren pushing me away. She was teaching Elijah to do it too. The only place I felt visible was at the kitchen table, and even that was taken from me. It used to be the heart of this house. When Marcus was alive, we'd all sit there together, laughing, arguing, telling stories. Sunday dinners, birthday cakes, Thanksgiving. The table held every important moment. Now, I ate there alone every night while Lauren and Elijah ate in the living room in front of the TV. I could hear them through the wall, the low murmur of voices, the canned laughter from whatever show they were watching, the sound of forks scraping plates. And I sat in the kitchen, chewing food I couldn't taste, feeling like a ghost haunting my own son's house. One night, I came downstairs to find a piece of paper on the counter. It was a real estate flyer, full color, glossy. The headline read, "Peaceful Senior Living Communities, Independent, Supportive, Affordable." It was folded open to a page with photos of smiling elderly people playing cards and gardening in matching pastel polo shirts. The flyer was placed directly in front of my usual seat at the table. Not by accident. I picked it up and stared at it. My hands didn't shake. I didn't feel angry. I just felt hollow. I heard footsteps behind me. Lauren walked into the kitchen to refill her wine glass. She saw me holding the flyer. Our eyes met. She didn't apologize, didn't explain. She just took her wine and walked back to the living room. I set the flyer down, smoothed it flat with my palm, and left it exactly where she'd placed it. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and felt the weight of invisibility pressing down on my chest. I'd spent 68 years building a life, raising a son, working hard, being a good man, and now I was being erased. Not with violence, not with shouting, with silence, with cold shoulders, with real estate flyers left on kitchen counters. I thought about leaving, just packing my things and going. But going where? I had no one else. Marcus was gone. My wife had passed 10 years ago. My friends were scattered, retired, living their own lives. And more than that, I didn't want to leave Elijah. He was all I had left of my son. I could see Marcus in his face, in the way he laughed, in the stubborn set of his jaw. I couldn't just walk away from him. So I stayed. I made breakfast no one ate. I fixed things no one thanked me for. I sat at the kitchen table alone, night after night, invisible. And I told myself it would get better. It didn't. 1 week later, everything changed. "You need to move." Lauren's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. I looked up from my coffee, startled. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, her face hard and unreadable. It was 7:30 on a Saturday morning. I'd been up since 5, sitting at the table, watching the sun rise through the window, thinking about Marcus, trying to find peace in the silence. "What?" I said. "You heard me," she said. "I need you to move. Out of the way." I looked around, confused. I wasn't blocking anything. "I'm just sitting here," I said. "Exactly." Her jaw tightened. "You're always just sitting here, watching, waiting. I can't even walk through my own house without feeling like you're observing me." I set my coffee down slowly. My chest felt tight. "Lauren, I'm not trying to. I have plans today," she interrupted. "Friends coming over. And I don't want you here." The words hung in the air between us. "This is my home," I said quietly. Her eyes flashed. "No, it's my home. It was Marcus's home. And now it's mine." I felt something crack inside me. Something that had been bending for weeks finally snapped. "I'm his father," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm Elijah's grandfather. This is my family." "Was your family?" she said coldly. "Marcus is dead. And I didn't ask you to come here. You invited yourself." You said I could stay. You said, I know what I said. She stepped into the kitchen, her voice rising. I said it because I felt sorry for you. Because you looked so pathetic at the funeral, standing there with nowhere to go. But I'm done feeling sorry for you. My hands trembled. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. I'm grieving too, I said. I lost my son. And I lost my husband. Her voice was sharp, bitter. But you don't see me falling apart. You don't see me clinging to the past like some ghost that won't leave. I'm not a ghost. Then stop haunting me. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Every time I look at you, she said, her voice quieter now but no less cruel, I see him. I see Marcus. And I can't move on with you here. I can't breathe. I can't think. I can't live. So what are you saying? I asked, though I already knew. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. I'm saying I need you to leave, she said. Pack your things this week, or I'll pack them for you. The room tilted. I gripped the table harder. And Elijah? I asked, what about him? Elijah is my son, not yours, and I'll decide what's best for him. He needs me, I said, my voice breaking. He needs family. He has family. He has me. She turned toward the doorway, then stopped and looked back. I want you gone by Friday. Lauren, please. I'm done talking about this. She walked out of the kitchen. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Her bedroom door slammed shut. I sat there, frozen, staring at my coffee. The steam had stopped rising. It was already cold. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, maybe an hour. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of the floorboards above me. Lauren moving around in her room, getting ready for her friends, for her life. A life that didn't include me. Elijah came downstairs around 9. He walked into the kitchen, saw me sitting there, and hesitated. Hey, Grandpa, he said softly. Hey, buddy. He poured himself a bowl of cereal and sat down across from me. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Just the two of us, like it used to be. You okay? He asked, looking at me with those big brown eyes. Marcus's eyes. I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to say, your mother is kicking me out. I don't know when I'll see you again. I don't know if she'll even let me. But I couldn't put that weight on him. I'm fine, I said, forcing a smile. Just tired. He nodded and ate his cereal in silence. When he finished, he rinsed his bowl and put it in the dishwasher, something I had taught him to do. I'm going to Alex's house, he said. Mom said I could. Have fun, I said. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, then paused and looked back at me. Grandpa. Yeah. Are you leaving? My throat closed up. I couldn't speak. He didn't wait for an answer. He just left. The door clicked shut behind him, and I was alone again. That night, after Lauren's friends had come and gone, loud voices, laughter, music thumping through the walls. I sat in my small room and stared at the boxes I'd unpacked just weeks ago. I thought about what she'd said, that I was haunting her, that I was suffocating her, that every time she looked at me, she saw Marcus. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was holding on too tight, trying to keep my son alive through her, through Elijah, through this house. But then I thought about the real estate flyer, the cold dinners, the way she looked through me like I wasn't there, the way she was teaching my grandson to do the same. And I realized something. This wasn't about grief. This wasn't about her needing space to heal. This was about control, about erasing Marcus's memory, and me along with it. She wanted me gone because I reminded her of the man she'd married, the man who'd loved her, the man who'd built this life with her. And for some reason, she wanted to forget him. I pulled out my phone and stared at it for a long time. Then I made a call. Hello? Yeah, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. I need to see a house. Tomorrow. Sure thing, the realtor said. What area are you looking in? I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street below, at the house across from us, the one with a for sale sign that had been sitting in the yard for months. I know exactly where I want to be, I said. I hung up and sat down on the edge of my bed. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My chest didn't feel tight. For the first time since I'd moved into this house, I felt something other than sadness. I felt clarity. She wanted me gone? Fine. I'd leave. But I wasn't going to disappear. The realtor's name was Jennifer. She was young, eager, and talked too much. This property has been on the market for 7 months, she said as we stood on the front porch. The owners moved out of state for work, and honestly, it's priced to sell. Need some cosmetic updates, but the bones are solid. Great neighborhood. Quiet street. I wasn't listening. I was looking across the street at Lauren's house, at the white shutters, the front porch where Elijah used to leave his bike, the living room window where I could see the faint glow of the television, even now, midday on a Sunday. How much? I asked. Jennifer blinked. I'm sorry. How much are they asking? She pulled out her phone and scrolled. $215,000. But like I said, there's room to negotiate. The market's been slow, and the sellers are motivated. If you're serious, I think we could get them down to... I'll pay asking price, I said. Cash. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed, then opened again. Cash, she repeated. Cash. I want to close as fast as possible. This week if we can. She stared at me like I'd just spoken a different language. Mr. Harrison, she said carefully, most buyers want to negotiate, inspect, take their time. Are you sure you don't want to? I'm sure. Have you even seen the inside yet? I looked at the house. 2 stories. Brick facade. Front porch with peeling paint. A bay window on the second floor that faced directly toward Lauren's home. Let's see it, I said. She unlocked the door and led me inside. The house smelled like dust and old carpet. The walls were faded yellow. The floors creaked. But she was right. The bones were solid. High ceilings. Good natural light. A fireplace in the living room that just needed cleaning. Kitchen's dated. Jennifer said, leading me through, but functional. You could update it over time if you wanted. I nodded, barely looking. I walked through the dining room, up the stairs, past the bedrooms. Then I stopped at the one at the front of the house. It was empty except for an old desk left behind by the previous owners. The bay window looked out over the street and directly into Lauren's living room. I could see her couch, her television, the corner of the kitchen table where I used to sit. This would make a great office, Jennifer said behind me. Lots of light. Nice view. Yeah, I said quietly. Nice view. I stood there for a long moment, hands in my pockets, calculating. I'll take it, I said. Jennifer laughed nervously. Don't you want to see the rest of the... I'll take it, I repeated, turning to face her. Draw up the paperwork. I'll have my bank transfer the funds tomorrow. I want to close by Friday. Her smile faltered. Mr. Harrison, even with cash, there are inspections, appraisals, title searches. I'll waive the inspection. I'll pay for a rush on everything else. Just make it happen. She studied me for a moment, her professional mask slipping just slightly. I could see the question in her eyes. Why? But she didn't ask. People in her business don't ask questions when someone's offering cash. All right, she said slowly. I'll call the sellers tonight. If they agree, we can move fast. Good, I said. Let's go sign the offer. 3 days later, I packed my things. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't explain where I was going. I just waited until Lauren and Elijah left, her to work, him to school, and I loaded my 4 boxes into my truck. I left the room exactly as I'd found it. Bed made, surfaces wiped clean. The only thing I added was a check on the kitchen counter. 3 months of utilities, groceries, internet, All the bills I'd been covering quietly while she pretended not to notice. I didn't leave a note. The check said everything that needed to be said. I drove my truck across the street and parked in the driveway of my new house. The movers arrived an hour later. Not that I had much to move. A bed, a chair, a few pieces of furniture from storage I'd been keeping since my wife passed. By the end of the day, I was unpacked. I stood in the empty living room and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace, not happiness. Not yet, but peace. I walked upstairs to the front bedroom and set up the old desk beneath the bay window. I placed a lamp on it, a notebook, a pen. Then I sat down and looked out at the street, at Lauren's house, at the life I just walked away from. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt present. She wanted me gone. So I was gone, but I wasn't far. Lauren came home just after 5. I watched her pull into the driveway, get out of her car, walk to the front door. She paused before going inside, pulling out her phone, scrolling. She didn't look across the street. Not yet. Elijah came home an hour later on the bus. He ran up the porch steps, dropped his backpack by the door, disappeared inside. I sat at my desk and watched the lights come on in their house, one by one. Kitchen, living room, upstairs hallway, Elijah's bedroom. And then, just before dark, Lauren opened the front door to bring in the trash cans. She froze. Her eyes landed on my truck in the driveway across the street, then on the house, then on the window where I sat. I didn't move, didn't wave, just looked at her. Her face went pale. Her mouth opened slightly. She stood there, one hand still on the trash can, staring. I took a sip of my coffee and held her gaze. She let go of the trash can. It clattered onto its side. She turned and walked quickly back inside, slamming the door behind her. I set my coffee down and leaned back in my chair. A moment later, I saw her shadow move past the living room window. Then the curtains snapped shut. I smiled, not cruelly, just knowingly she could close the curtains. But she couldn't unsee me. The next morning, I was up at dawn. I sat on my front porch with a cup of coffee and the Sunday paper, rocking slowly in a chair I bought from a yard sale the day before. At 7:15, Lauren's front door opened. She stepped out in her bathrobe to grab the newspaper from the driveway. She glanced across the street, saw me, froze. I didn't wave, didn't smile. I just turned the page of my newspaper and kept reading. She snatched the paper off the ground and hurried back inside. The door slammed. I took another sip of coffee and watched the sun rise over the rooftops. This wasn't about revenge. I wasn't here to torment her or make her life miserable. I was here because I refused to disappear. She kicked me out of her house. But she couldn't kick me out of this neighborhood. She couldn't erase me. She couldn't pretend I didn't exist. Every time she looked out her window, she'd see me. Every time she left the house, she'd know I was watching, not with malice, just with presence. I wasn't going anywhere. That afternoon, I started working on the house. I hired a crew to paint the exterior, fresh white with black shutters. I had the lawn mowed and edged. I planted flowers in the front beds. Small touches. Nothing extravagant, but enough to make it clear I wasn't just passing through. I was settling in. By the end of the week, the house looked better than it had in years. Clean, cared for, alive. And every day, I sat on that porch with my coffee, rocking in my chair, watching the street wake up. One morning, Elijah came outside to wait for the school bus. He looked across the street and saw me. His eyes went wide. "Grandpa," he called out, his voice uncertain. I lifted my hand in a small wave. He smiled just a little and started to walk toward me. But before he could cross the street, Lauren appeared in the doorway. "Elijah," she snapped, "get back here. Now." His smile vanished. He looked at me one more time, then turned and walked back to the porch. The bus arrived. He got on without looking back. Lauren stood in the doorway, arms crossed, glaring at me. I took another sip of my coffee and stared right back. She went inside and slammed the door so hard the wreath fell off. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just rocked in my chair and waited for the next day to begin, because I had all the time in the world, and she was starting to realize that. The first crack appeared 2 weeks later. I was sitting at my desk in the front bedroom, reading, when I heard shouting from across the street. The window was open. It was a warm afternoon, and Lauren's voice carried clear as day. "I don't care what it costs. Just fix it." I looked up. Through her living room window, I could see her pacing back and forth. Phone pressed her ear. Her free hand gestured wildly. "No, I can't wait until next week. The car won't start. I have to get to work." She listened for a moment, then her shoulders sagged. "Fine," she said, her voice deflated. "Fine. I'll figure it out." She hung up and stood there in the middle of her living room, staring at nothing. I knew that car. It was Marcus's old Camry, still titled in his name. Technically, in my name as the executor of his estate. She'd been driving it since he died, and I'd never said a word, never asked her to transfer the title, never charged her for insurance. I just handled it quietly, the way I handled everything. But I wasn't handling it anymore. The next morning, I watched her try to jumpstart the car in the driveway. She had the hood up, jumper cables in her hands, looking at the engine like it might explain itself. Elijah stood beside her in his school clothes, backpack on, clearly going to be late. "Mom, the bus already left," he said. "I know," she snapped. "Just give me a minute." She tried again. The engine clicked but didn't turn over. She slammed the hood down and pulled out her phone. I watched her make 3 calls. Each one ended the same way. She'd say a few words, her face would tighten, and she'd hang up. No one was coming to help. Finally, she turned to Elijah. "You're walking today," she said. "Mom, it's 3 miles. "Then you better get going." He stared at her, disbelief written all over his face. Then he adjusted his backpack and started walking down the street, shoulders slumped. I stood up from my desk. By the time I got downstairs and out the front door, Elijah was already at the end of the block. "Elijah," I called. He stopped and turned around. His face brightened when he saw me. "Grandpa." I walked toward him, keys in hand. "Come on, I'll give you a ride." Really? He ran back toward me, and I unlocked my truck. He climbed in, relief flooding his face. As I started the engine, I glanced across the street. Lauren was standing in the driveway, watching us. Her arms were crossed. Her jaw was clenched. I didn't wave, just put the truck in reverse and backed out. In the rear-view mirror, I saw her turn and walk back into the house. "Thanks, Grandpa," Elijah said quietly as we drove. "Mom's been really stressed lately." "I know," I said. "She says we can't afford to fix the car right now. She says we have to wait." I glanced at him. He was staring out the window, his young face creased with worry he shouldn't have to carry. "Don't worry about that, buddy," I said. "It'll work out." "Will it?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure it would. Over the next few weeks, I watched the cracks widen. The lawn across the street started to grow wild. The grass got long, weeds popping up in the flower beds. The mailbox overflowed with envelopes, some of them marked with red stamps. "Past due," "Final notice." Lauren stopped going out. She came home from work and went straight inside. The curtains stayed drawn, even on sunny days. One evening, I saw her sitting alone on the couch through a gap in the curtains. The TV wasn't on. The lights were dim. She was just sitting there, staring at her phone. Elijah spent more and more time in his room. I could see his light on late into the night. I wanted to go over there, to knock on the door and ask if they were okay. But I didn't, because she'd made it clear she didn't want my help. She didn't want me. So I stayed on my side of the street, and watched. One Saturday afternoon, a tow truck showed up. I was in my garden pulling weeds when I heard the diesel engine rumble down the street. It stopped in front of Lauren's house. The driver got out, clipboard in hand, and walked up to her door. She answered, and even from across the street, I could see the color drain from her face. They talked for a few minutes. She shook her head, gestured toward the car. Her voice rose, not loud enough to make out words, but loud enough to hear the desperation. The driver just shook his head and walked back to the truck. 10 minutes later, Marcus's Camry was hooked up and towed away. Lauren stood in the driveway, arms wrapped around herself, watching it disappear down the street. When it was gone, she just stood there, staring at the empty space where the car used to be. Then she turned and looked across the street. At me. I was still kneeling in my garden, dirt on my hands, pruning shears in my lap. Our eyes met. Hers were red, tired, broken. Mine were steady. She turned and went back inside. That night, I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was almost 9 o'clock. I set down my book and walked to the door, flipping on the porch light. Lauren stood on my doorstep. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, sweatpants and an old t-shirt. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at her, at the woman who'd told me to leave, who'd made me feel invisible, who'd kicked me out of my son's house like I was nothing. "Please," she added, her voice cracking. I stepped aside and let her in. She walked into my living room and looked around, at the clean floors, the warm lighting, the framed photos on the mantel. Marcus as a boy, Marcus and me fishing, Marcus holding baby Elijah. She stared at those photos for a long time. "I need help," she finally said, not looking at me. I stayed by the door, arms crossed. "With what?" "The car. I can't get to work without it. I can't afford the payments, and they repossessed it today. I don't know what to do." "Call a friend," I said. She flinched. "I don't have anyone." "What about that woman who was at the house a few weeks ago? The one you were laughing with?" Lauren's jaw tightened. "She's busy." "I see." She turned to face me, and I saw something I hadn't seen before. "Shame. I know I messed up," she said. "I know I was harsh, but I was grieving. I didn't know how to handle it, and you were just always there, and You blamed me," I said. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. "You looked at me and saw Marcus," I continued, "and instead of letting that bring you comfort, you let it make you angry. You pushed me out because it was easier than dealing with your grief." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." The silence between us was heavy. "I can co-sign a loan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Or I could pay you back over time. I just need help with the down payment. Please." I looked at her, at the desperation in her eyes, at the way her hands trembled, and I felt something twist in my chest. Not pity, not satisfaction, just clarity. "No," I said. Her face crumpled. "What?" "I'm not your safety net anymore, Lauren. You made it very clear that you don't need me, that you can handle things on your own. But I can't." "Then you'll figure it out," I said. "The same way I had to figure it out when you threw me out. I didn't throw you out. You gave me a week to leave my son's house. Don't pretend it was anything other than what it was." She stared at me, tears streaming down her face now. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "You did." "So you're just going to let me suffer? Let Elijah suffer?" That hit harder than I expected. I thought of my grandson, of his worried face in the truck, of the light in his room burning late into the night. "Elijah doesn't have to suffer," I said carefully. "But that's on you, not me." Lauren wiped her eyes roughly. "You're cruel." "No," I said. I'm just not convenient anymore. She turned and walked toward the door, her steps quick and angry. She yanked it open, then stopped and looked back at me one last time. He would be ashamed of you, she said. The words were meant to wound. And maybe once they would have, but I just looked at her and said quietly, "No, he'd be ashamed of you." She left without another word. I stood in my doorway and watched her cross the street, disappearing into her dark house. The door slammed shut behind her. I closed my own door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. I'd drawn a line, and I couldn't uncross it. But as I walked back to my chair and sat down in the silence of my clean, warm home, I realized something. I didn't want to. 3 days after Lauren knocked on my door, I heard a child crying. It was late afternoon. I was sitting on my porch, reading the newspaper, when I heard the sound drift across the street. High-pitched, desperate, the kind of crying that comes from deep frustration, not just sadness. I looked up. Elijah was sitting on the front steps of Lauren's house, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. I set down the paper and stood up. He didn't see me at first. He just sat there, crying, his backpack thrown on the ground beside him. "Elijah," I called across the street. His head snapped up. His face was red and blotchy, streaked with tears. "Grandpa." I crossed the street and walked up the driveway. "What's wrong, buddy?" He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to pull himself together. "Nothing. I'm fine." "You don't look fine." He looked down at his shoes. "Mom's not home. I forgot my key. I've been sitting out here for an hour." I glanced at the front door. Locked. Curtains drawn. No car in the driveway. "Where is she?" I asked. "I don't know. Work, I guess. But she's supposed to be home by now." His voice cracked. "I texted her, but she didn't answer. And my phone's almost dead." I crouched down beside him, my knees protesting. "How long she been gone?" "Since this morning. She got a ride from someone. She said she'd be back by 3. He looked at his watch. "It's almost 5. I felt anger flare in my chest. Not at Elijah. At her. "Come on," I said, standing up. "Let's go to my place. You can wait there." He hesitated. "Mom said I'm not supposed to." "I don't care what your mom said. You're not sitting out here alone." He grabbed his backpack and followed me across the street. Inside, I made him a sandwich and poured him a glass of lemonade. He ate slowly, quietly, his eyes darting toward the window every few minutes. "She's been like this a lot lately," he said after a while. "Forgetting stuff. Coming home late. She's always on her phone or staring at nothing." "How are you doing?" I asked. "With school and everything?" He shrugged. "Okay, I guess. It's hard to focus sometimes." "Because of your dad?" He nodded. "And because Mom's always stressed. She yells a lot now. Not at me, really. Just at everything." I reached across the table and squeezed his shoulder. "That's not your fault, you know." "I know." But his voice said he didn't believe it. We sat in silence for a while. He finished his sandwich. I gave him another. He ate that one too. At 6:30, I heard a car door slam outside. Elijah jumped up and ran to the window. "That's her." I walked over and looked out. Lauren was getting out of a beat-up sedan driven by someone I didn't recognize. She said something to the driver, laughed, then waved as the car drove off. She turned toward her house, pulling out her phone, completely oblivious. Then she froze. She was staring at her empty porch, at the backpack that was no longer there. Her head whipped around, scanning the street, and then she saw my truck in the driveway, my porch light on. Her face went hard. She marched across the street and pounded on my door. I opened it before she could knock a second time. "Where is he?" she demanded. "Inside," I said calmly. "Waiting for you. You had no right." He was locked out, sitting on your porch, crying. Her mouth snapped shut. For over an hour, I continued. No key. No way to reach you. I was working late, she said defensively. You were laughing in someone's car. Her face flushed. That's none of your business. It is when my grandson is sitting outside in the cold because you forgot about him. I didn't forget. Grandpa. Elijah appeared behind me, backpack in hand. It's okay. I'm ready to go. Lauren's expression softened when she saw him. Hey, baby. I'm sorry. I got held up at work, and... It's fine, Mom, he said quietly. Can we just go home? She nodded, then glared at me one more time before turning away. Elijah followed her across the street. Before they reached the door, he looked back at me and mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded. Lauren unlocked the door and ushered him inside without another word, but I saw the way her hands were shaking, the way she kept glancing back at me. Even as the door closed, she was unraveling. The next week, things got worse. I started noticing more, because now I was paying attention. The lights in Lauren's house stayed on later and later. Some nights, they didn't go off at all. The trash piled up by the side of the house. Recycling bins overflowed. One morning, I saw her leave the house in wrinkled clothes, her hair uncombed, dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she was barely holding on. And then one evening, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I was at my desk, reading, when I heard shouting. I looked up and saw Lauren through her living room window, pacing back and forth. Phone pressed to her ear. "I told you I'd have it by the 15th, she yelled. "I just need more time." She listened, her face contorting in frustration. No, please don't." She pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at it. Then she hurled it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. Elijah appeared in the doorway behind her, eyes wide. She spun around, saw him, and her face crumpled. He didn't say anything, just turned and walked back upstairs. Lauren sank onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. I watched her sit there, alone, shaking. And for the first time since I had moved across the street, I felt something other than anger. I felt pity. Not enough to cross the street. Not enough to knock on her door. But enough to recognize what I was watching. A woman who'd pushed away everyone who could have helped her. Who convinced herself she didn't need anyone. Who was now paying the price for that pride. The next morning, I was watering my garden when I heard my name. "Mr. Harrison?" I turned. Lauren was standing at the edge of my driveway, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. She looked smaller than ever. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, defeated. I set down the hose. "What about?" She took a breath. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Just waited. "I'm sorry for kicking you out. I'm sorry for treating you like you didn't matter. I'm sorry for..." Her voice broke. "I'm sorry for all of it. Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm losing everything," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "My car's gone. I'm behind on the mortgage. I can barely afford groceries. And Elijah," she pressed a hand to her mouth, "he deserves better than this." "Yes," I said, "he does." She looked at me, desperate. I don't know what to do. I studied her for a long moment. This woman who'd been so cold, so cruel, now standing in my driveway, broken and begging. Part of me wanted to turn away, to let her drown in the consequences she created. But another part, the part that remembered Marcus, that remembered the man he'd loved, the mother of my grandson, couldn't do it. "I'm not going to fix this for you," I said finally. Her face fell. "But," I continued, "I'm not going to let Elijah suffer either." "What does that mean?" "It means I'll help him. Not you. Him. If he needs a ride to school, I'll take him. If he needs food, I'll feed him. If he needs someone to talk to, I'm here." "And me?" she whispered. "You figure out your own life, Lauren. You wanted independence. You wanted to do it alone. So do it. But you don't get to use me as a safety net anymore." She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. Can Elijah come see you?" He's always welcome here. I said, always. She nodded slowly, then turned and walked back across the street. I watched her go, feeling the weight of the line I'd just drawn. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't cruelty either. It was something else. Boundaries. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Elijah showed up at my door the next Saturday morning with a soccer ball under his arm. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, a shy smile on his face. "Mom said I could come over, if that's okay." I looked past him across the street. Lauren was standing in her doorway, watching. When our eyes met, she gave a small, hesitant nod, then went back inside. "Of course it's okay," I said, stepping aside. "Come on in." He dropped the ball by the door and followed me to the kitchen. I poured him a glass of orange juice and started making pancakes, the way I used to make them for Marcus when he was a boy. Elijah sat at the table, swinging his legs, watching me move around the kitchen. "I missed this," he said quietly. "Missed what?" "Being here, with you. It feels normal." I flipped a pancake and glanced at him. "How are things at home?" He shrugged. "Better, I guess. Mom's not yelling as much. She got a new job. It pays less, but she says it's closer, so she can walk if she has to. That's good." "Yeah." He paused. "She cries a lot at night, though, when she thinks I'm asleep. I can hear her through the wall." My chest tightened. I set the spatula down and turned to face him. "Your mom's going through a hard time," I said carefully, "but that's not your responsibility to fix. You understand that?" He nodded, but his eyes looked older than they should. "I know. It's just, I miss how things used to be when Dad was here, when we were all together. I miss that too, buddy." We ate pancakes in comfortable silence. When we finished, he helped me wash the dishes, something I'd taught him years ago, and then we went outside to kick the soccer ball around. We played in my backyard for over an hour. He was good, fast. Marcus had been teaching him before he died, and I could see my son's patience in every move Elijah made. Dad used to say I'd play varsity someday. Elijah said, dribbling the ball between his feet. He was right. I said, "You're good, Elijah, really good." He smiled, a genuine smile this time, and passed the ball to me. We played until we were both sweating and out of breath. Then we sat on the back porch steps, drinking cold water, watching the clouds move across the sky. "Grandpa," he said after a while. "Yeah." "Why did you move across the street?" I'd been waiting for that question. I chose my words carefully. "Your mom and I needed space," I said. "We were both grieving, and sometimes people grieve differently. It was better for both of us if I had my own place. But you're so close. You can see our house from your window." "I know." "Why?" I looked at him, at those eyes that were so much like Marcus's. "Because I wanted to be close to you," I said honestly. "Even if I couldn't be in the same house, I wanted to be near you, so you'd know I'm here. Always." He leaned against me, and I put my arm around his shoulders. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "Me too, buddy. Me too." After that day, Elijah started coming over regularly. Every Saturday morning, he'd show up with his soccer ball, or his homework, or sometimes just himself. We'd cook together, work on projects, talk about school, about life, about his dad. I taught him how to fix a leaky pipe, how to change a tire, how to make his grandmother's cornbread recipe. Simple things, important things, the things Marcus would have taught him if he were still here. And slowly, week by week, I watched him come back to life. The sadness in his eyes didn't disappear, but it softened. The weight on his shoulders lifted just a little. He laughed more, talked more, moved through the world like a kid again, instead of someone carrying adult-sized grief. One afternoon, about a month after he'd started visiting, I was in the garage showing him how to organize tools when we heard a knock at the front door. "I'll get it," Elijah said, jogging toward the house. I followed behind him, wiping grease from my hands. When I reached the front door, I found Elijah holding a plate covered in aluminum foil. Lauren stood on the porch, hands clasped in front of her, looking nervous. "Hi," she said. I made cookies. Chocolate chip. I thought maybe—" She trailed off, glancing between me and Elijah. "They smell amazing, Mom," Elijah said, peeking under the foil. Lauren's eyes found mine. There was something tentative in her expression, something fragile. "Thank you," I said, taking the plate. "That was thoughtful." "It's the least I could do," she said quietly. "For everything you've been doing for Elijah." We stood there in awkward silence for a moment. "Would you like to come in?" I asked. She looked surprised. "Are you sure?" For a few minutes. She stepped inside, and I led her to the kitchen. Elijah immediately grabbed a cookie and bit into it. "Still warm," he said, grinning. Lauren smiled at him. A real smile, soft and maternal. And for a second, I saw the woman Marcus had fallen in love with. "Can I get you some coffee?" I offered. "That would be nice," she said. I poured 2 cups, and we sat at the kitchen table while Elijah went back to the garage to keep organizing tools. Lauren wrapped her hands around her mug and stared into it. "I got help," she said quietly. "A therapist? I've been going twice a week." "That's good," I said. "She's been helping me work through everything, the grief, the anger, the guilt." She looked up at me. "I blamed you for so much, and that wasn't fair." "No," I said, "it wasn't. I know I can't take back what I did, what I said, but I'm trying to be better. For Elijah, for myself." I nodded slowly. "I can see that." "I'm also working on the house," she continued. "I got caught up on the mortgage. Barely. And I've been cleaning, organizing. It's still a mess, but it's better than it was." "Good." She took a sip of coffee, then set the mug down. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I want you to know that I see what I did, and I'm sorry." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen before. Humility. She wasn't asking for a handout. She wasn't asking me to fix her life. She was just acknowledging the truth. "Apology accepted," I said finally. Her eyes widened slightly. Really. But that doesn't mean we go back to the way things were." "I know. Elijah will keep coming here. That's not negotiable." "I want him to," she said quickly. "He's happier when he's with you. I can see it. And you and I paused, choosing my words carefully. "We're not going to be close. Not like we were when Marcus was alive. That trust is broken. But we can be civil. For Elijah's sake." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "That's more than I deserve." "Maybe," I said, "but it's what I'm offering." She wiped her eyes and stood up. "Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on him." "I would never give up on Elijah," I said. "He's my family." She nodded and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back. "Marcus would be proud of you," she said softly. "The way you've handled all of this, the way you've been there for Elijah, he'd be proud." I didn't respond, just watched her walk across the street and disappear into her house. Elijah came back inside a few minutes later, a wrench in his hand. "Mom seemed happy," he said. "Yeah," I said. "She did." "Does this mean things are getting better?" I looked at him, at the hope in his young face, and decided to tell him the truth. "Things are different now," I said. "They're not going to go back to the way they were. But different doesn't have to be bad. It just has to be honest." He thought about that for a moment, then nodded. "Okay," he said. "I can do different." "Me too, buddy. Me too." That Sunday, I went to church for the first time since Marcus's funeral. I sat in the back pew, listening to the choir, letting the music wash over me. Afterward, a few people came up to say hello, to welcome me back. It felt good to be part of something again. As I was leaving, I saw Lauren's car pull into the parking lot. She got out, then opened the back door for Elijah. He saw me and waved. I waved back. Lauren noticed me standing there. For a moment, we just looked at each other across the parking lot. Then she gave a small nod, respectful, acknowledging, and walked into the church with Elijah. I got in my truck and drove home, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness. Not yet, but peace. A quiet, steady peace that came from knowing I'd done the right thing. I'd set boundaries. I protected my grandson. I'd refused to let cruelty define me. And slowly, carefully, something new was being built. Not what we'd lost, but something we could live with. That evening, I sat on my porch as the sun set, rocking slowly in my chair. Across the street, I could see Lauren and Elijah through their living room window. They were playing a board game at the table, the same table where I used to eat alone. Lauren laughed at something Elijah said. He grinned and rolled the dice. I watched them for a moment, then turned my attention back to the street. The house across from me was no longer a symbol of rejection. It was just a house. And mine was home. 6 months later, I was sitting on my porch at sunrise when I heard footsteps on the sidewalk. I looked up. Lauren was standing at the edge of my driveway, coffee cup in hand, wearing a jacket against the autumn chill. "Morning," she said. "Morning." I replied, "Mind if I join you for a minute?" I gestured to the empty chair beside me. She climbed the steps and sat down, cradling her coffee, staring out at the quiet street. We sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable, just present. "I got a promotion," she said finally, "at work. It's not much, but it's enough that I can start saving again. Maybe get a decent car in a few months." "That's good news," I said. "Yeah." She took a sip of coffee. "I also paid off the mortgage arrears. Finally. It took everything I had, but we're current now. You should be proud of that." She nodded slowly. "I am, but I also know—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I know I wouldn't have made it here if you hadn't been across the street, if you hadn't been there for Elijah when I couldn't be." I didn't respond, just rocked slowly in my chair. "I'm not asking for anything," she continued. "I just want to say thank you for not disappearing, for staying." "I didn't stay for you," I said quietly. "I know." She looked at me. "You stayed for him and for yourself. And that's exactly what you should have done." We sat in silence again, watching the sun climb higher over the rooftops. "I think about that night a lot," she said. "The night I told you to leave. I think about how scared I was, how angry, how I looked at you and saw everything I'd lost." She swallowed hard. I was drowning, and instead of reaching for help, I pushed away the only person who could have kept me afloat. "You weren't ready for help," I said. "Some people have to hit bottom before they can climb back up." "Did you know?" she asked. "When you bought this house, did you know I'd fall apart?" I thought about that, about the day I'd stood in this empty house and looked out the window at her living room. "No," I said honestly. "I didn't know what would happen. I just knew I couldn't let you erase me. I couldn't let you make me disappear like I never mattered." "You mattered," she said, her voice thick. "You still matter. To Elijah, to this family." "This isn't family anymore," I said. "Not the way it was." She flinched but nodded. "No, it's not. But it's something," I continued. "Something honest. Something with boundaries. And maybe that's enough." She wiped her eyes. "It has to be." We finished our coffee in silence. When she stood to leave, she paused at the top of the steps. "I'll never be able to make up for what I did," she said. "But I want you to know I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying to be better." "I can see that," I said. She nodded and walked back across the street. I watched her go, then turned my attention back to the sunrise. Later that morning, Elijah came over with his baseball glove. "Grandpa, can we play catch?" he asked, his face bright with hope. "Of course," I said. We went to the backyard and threw the ball back and forth, the leather smacking satisfyingly against our gloves. He'd gotten better over the past few months. Stronger, more confident. Coach says I might make the travel team next year, he said, winding up for a throw. That's great, buddy. You've been working hard. Will you come to my games? He asked. If I make it? Every single one, I said. He grinned and threw the ball harder. After a while, we took a break and sat on the back porch steps. I went inside and came back with something I've been holding on to for months. Marcus's baseball glove. Elijah's eyes widened when he saw it. Is that your dad's? I said, handing it to him. I've been waiting for the right time to give it to you. He took it carefully, like it was made of glass. He slipped his hand inside, flexing his fingers, feeling the worn leather. It fits, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He'd want you to have it, I said. Elijah stared at the glove for a long moment, then looked up at me with tears in his eyes. I miss him, Grandpa. I miss him, too. He leaned against me, and I put my arm around him, holding him while he cried. Not the desperate, confused crying from months ago. This was different, cleaner, the kind of grief that comes with acceptance. He's still here, you know, I said quietly, in you, in the way you throw a ball, in the way you laugh, in the way you care about people. He's still here. Elijah nodded against my shoulder. Do you think he'd be proud of me? I know he would. We sat there for a while longer, two people who'd lost the same man, holding each other up. When Elijah finally pulled away, he wiped his eyes and looked at the glove again. Can we keep playing? He asked. With this one? Absolutely. We played until the sun was high overhead, until we were both sweating and laughing, until the grief felt just a little bit lighter. Across the street, I saw Lauren watching from her kitchen window. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't crying either. She just stood there, hands on the counter, watching her son play. And when Elijah waved at her, she waved back. That evening, after Elijah had gone home, I sat at my desk in the front bedroom. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. The lights were coming on in Lauren's house. Kitchen first, then living room, then Elijah's bedroom upstairs. I'd spent months watching those lights, watching her unravel, watching her struggle, watching her slowly, painfully, put herself back together. And I realized something. This was never about revenge. It was never about making her suffer or proving a point. It was about refusing to disappear, about maintaining my dignity when someone tried to strip it away, about showing Elijah that love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, and that walking away with grace is its own form of strength. Lauren had wanted me gone because I reminded her of everything she'd lost. But by staying, by positioning myself across the street, visible but separate, I'd force her to confront something more important. The cost of pushing people away. The weight of her own choices. The difference between independence and isolation. She'd had to learn to stand on her own. And she had. Not because I rescued her, but because I refused to. That was the reckoning. Not punishment. Not revenge. Just truth. I heard a knock on my front door and went downstairs to answer it. Lauren stood there, Elijah beside her. We were wondering, she said hesitantly, if you'd like to have dinner with us tomorrow night. Nothing fancy. Just spaghetti and salad. But she glanced at Elijah, then back at me. We'd like you to be there. I looked at them both. At the hope in Elijah's eyes. At the tentative olive branch Lauren was extending. This wasn't forgiveness. Not completely. This wasn't reconciliation. Not in the way it used to be. But it was something. I'd like that, I said. Elijah's face lit up. Really? Really? 6 o'clock? Lauren asked. I'll be there. They left, and I closed the door, leaning against it for a moment. The next evening, I walked across the street for the first time in 6 months. Lauren answered the door. The house was clean, organized. The kitchen smelled like garlic bread and tomato sauce. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. I walked into the living room and saw that the photos were back on the mantel. Pictures of Marcus, of all of us together. They'd been gone for months, hidden away, but now they were back. Elijah came bounding down the stairs. "Grandpa, I set your place at the table." I followed him to the dining room. The table was set for 3, and my seat, the one I used to sit in, had a folded napkin and a glass of water waiting. We sat down together. Lauren served the food. Elijah talked about his day at school, about his upcoming baseball tryouts, about a book he was reading, and for the first time in a long time, it felt almost normal. Not the same, never the same, but normal. After dinner, Elijah went upstairs to do his homework, and Lauren walked me to the door. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for coming, for giving us a chance." "It's not about chances," I said. "It's about showing up. You're showing up now. That's what matters." She nodded, her eyes glistening. I stepped out onto the porch and looked across the street at my house, at the warm light glowing in the windows, at the porch where I'd spent so many mornings watching, waiting, holding my ground. "I'm not moving back," I said, turning to face her. "You understand that, right?" "I know," she said, "and I'm not asking you to. You built a life over there, a good life. You deserve that. But I'm here," I said, "for Elijah, for dinners like this, for whatever he needs." "I know," she said, "and that's enough." I nodded and walked down the steps. Halfway across the street, I heard her call my name. I turned back. She was standing on the porch, silhouetted against the light from inside. "He would have wanted this," she said. "Marcus, he would have wanted us to find our way back, not to what we were, but to something we can live with." I looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Yeah," I said, "he would have." I crossed the street and climbed my own porch steps. As I opened my door, I looked back one more time. Lauren was still standing there, watching. I didn't wave, just gave a single nod. She nodded back. Then we both went inside. I sat in my living room, in the silence of my own space, and felt the weight of the past 6 months settle into something I could carry. Justice isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about refusing to let them define your worth. It's about setting boundaries and holding them even when it's hard. It's about showing up for the people who matter, even when the cost is high. And sometimes it's about giving people the space to fall and the dignity to climb back up on their own. I bought the house across the street to prove I wouldn't disappear. And in doing so, I found something I didn't expect. Peace, not in reconciliation, not in revenge, but in the quiet certainty that I'd done what was right. For Elijah, for myself, for the memory of my son, I'd held my ground. And in the end, that was enough. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The neighborhood settled into evening. Across the way, I could see Elijah's light still burning, could picture him bent over his homework at his desk. My grandson, my family, my reason for staying. I turned off the lamp and sat in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of home, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the house settling, the distant sound of crickets in the garden. And for the first time since Marcus died, I felt like I could breathe, not because everything was fixed, but because I'd learned something essential. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control how you respond. You can choose dignity over bitterness, boundaries over resentment, presence over revenge, and sometimes that's the most powerful choice of all. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street, at the house across from mine, where the lights were going off one by one, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, not inside that house, but here, in my own space, on my own terms, visible, present, unshakable, home.